Hello friends, it is finally back to school. We had a special back to school dinner. Let me cut back to that really quick and show you a little magical back to school meal we had the night before the kids went back. Look at this beautiful celery from the garden. For our special back to school meal, I am making moose stew. So we cut up a roast into chunks and I'm starting by browning that and then chopping up a bunch of vegetables. This onion is from a local farm. How beautiful is that? I'm actually going to be cooking this stew in the Instant Pot because my roast was frozen and I didn't give myself enough time to let it simmer all day. So I am browning it on the stove, but then we're going to just cook the whole thing in the Instant Pot. And then I saw this idea online for a very simple, fun dessert to make for the boys. So I will show you that here. Little meticulous cutting of some wafers, and then you'll see it all come together. I'm not going to give away the surprise just yet. I did melt some chocolate and then dipping them into the chocolate. This was really satisfying. Unfortunately, I needed white chocolate as well, and my white chocolate did not do as well, so I didn't film that part because I was really frustrated. It wasn't dipping nicely like the pink one did, but look at these beautiful little pencils. The white is a little bit chunky, but you get the point. They're cute little pencils. The kids love them. Then I wanted to make a cute little decoration for the table, so I just took my whole bag of school supplies that I had bought them and made a little centerpiece for the table. Mark had to take over for a few minutes and finish getting the table ready for dinner. My mouth is just watering thinking about this stew. It was so good. We had a salad from the garden, some bread. Grandpa joined us for dinner. It was just a nice way to send the boys off to school the next morning and make sure they had a good meal the night before. Lots of talking and just enjoying one another's company. I often get asked what grade the boys are in and how the schooling is divided up. The older two are in middle school. Bennett is starting 6th grade. Hunter is in 8th grade and will go into high school next year. The littles are in a elementary school, which is kindergarten through 5th grade. Everett is in 1st grade and Weston is in 4th grade this year. Simple, fun, good meal. I think that was the best moose stew I have ever made. Definitely writing down that recipe, and I will be making it again because it was so delicious. The boys are all back in school now. On top of it being back to school, it is also raspberry season around here. I showed on Instagram I had a handful from walking through the patch. Then I got a small little container of them after walking through the patch. No more. They are in full swing. Mark did most of the picking, but we ended up picking over 2 gallons of raspberries. This one was full as well, plus this one up here and this one here. So we've got so many raspberries. Last night Bennett chose to make some fruit leather out of the raspberries, so I am cutting that up and putting it with parchment paper. This is just applesauce. It's actually our homemade applesauce, plus raspberries and a little bit of sugar done in the dehydrator. We blend it up, pour it in these little trays, put it in our Cabela's dehydrator for about 10 hours, and it is so good. I'm gonna be making something else with raspberries here in a minute. I'll bring you along. Good job on the fruit leathers. Mm-hmm. He can't stop eating them. I think he'd eat the whole thing himself. All 8 trays.
I would and I could.
It was really good. It's getting dark in here. A couple hours have passed. Kids came home from school, had a bunch to do. But now I'm finally getting around to making freezer jam. I always just use original Sure-Gel freezer jam recipe. I could can some and then we wouldn't keep it in the freezer, but we just love the freezer jam, so we stick with it. It's probably the easiest thing to make too. First step is to crush 6 cups of raspberries. I'm gonna double the recipe at least, depending on how many we have. Have any of you watched the show on Disney Plus? What's it called, Bennett? Small Light? About the people that hid Anne Frank. It's making me think of that because they work in a pectin company, and this is pectin. I have been watching it and have been mesmerized by it. Okay, let's make this jam. So I decided to save time. I would make a double batch of raspberry freezer jam. That means that I have 12 cups of raspberries here. Then you smush them all down. Then you add the sugar. Next up, sugar. This is not all the sugar. It's an insane amount of sugar. Just kind of got to look away. So Bennett wanted to help, so he is stirring in the sugar as I'm adding it in. You kind of want the sugar to start to dissolve into the raspberry mixture. Then he went downstairs and got us some jars that we can put the raspberry jam into when we're done. And then it was time to cook the pectin. This is probably the trickiest part. You just got to get this right so that the chemical reaction happens correctly. Like I said, I'm doing 2 packets of pectin because I am doubling the recipe. So you get it into your cold water and then you start to stir it and mix it. And once it starts to boil, you turn on a timer. It has to have a fast boil for 1 whole minute. And you need to do this so that it will set correctly. Then you add it back into your raspberry and sugar mixture. And then you need to set another timer for 3 minutes because you got to stir for 3 minutes. If I don't set a timer at about 1.5 minutes, I think, oh, that's been 3 minutes, and it never is. So 3 minutes of stirring to make sure it's mixed in properly, and then it's time to put them in your jars. This is the easy part. It's so satisfying as you see all those jars start to fill up. Because this is freezer jam, this is almost the end of the process. We just need to put some lids on them, and then they actually need to sit out for 24 hours before you put them into the freezer. I actually did 4 batches of freezer jam. I ended up doing that whole process a second time because we just have so many berries. This raspberry patch is booming right now. We just had some friends over. They helped us pick over 3 gallons, and we just picked 2 days ago. That's kind of the cycle when it gets to be fall time. About every 2 days we have to harvest the raspberries. That's what keeps the patch nice and healthy. You don't get all moldy berries. So we are rolling in the berries. I have one more project I'm going to do with the berries other than just freeze some, but we also need to talk honey harvest because it is honey season as well as raspberry season. Got some uncapped honey here that has drained out, so we can do a little taste testing. It's good. It's got a really good flavor. Fresh honey is just so yummy. Okay, behind me, Mark is bringing out the hives of honey. We have had them in our heater room for the last several days, kind of drying out a little bit. We had to close the garage door because immediately some wasps that are just in our yard started flying in here because they could smell that honey. They were wanting to come have a feast. Okay, come sit down and let's chat. Okay. So in the fall, harvesting honey the Alaska way. This is kind of what happens.
So in Alaska, after the peak nectar flow, which usually happens in South Central Alaska, the end of July to early August, you need to pull your honey out of the hives. And what you do is you pull the honey out of the hives, and then you take it somewhere else to extract it. And then if you're wintering over in your bees, you immediately start feeding them some really heavy sugar syrup because...
Do you put extra boxes in there because you're taking out boxes, you just put new ones in? Like extra frames?
If you had enough, if you had extra, you would just put extra frames in there.
But they also have all those frames where they didn't have honey in. Okay, in the bottom.
Mm-hmm. So you start feeding them really heavy sugar syrup so they can have enough food stores to make it over the winter. Because once it gets cold, below about 40 degrees, you don't open up the hive and you just let them be, pretty much. You don't want to check on them if you don't have to, and just let them be in there. We offered our bees to a couple different friends that do beekeeping, and people that do beekeeping up here, they can winter over their hives.
It's really hard.
I don't know if either of our hives would have survived. Neither of them were super strong. You need to have a very, very strong hive going in the winter. Otherwise, they're not going to make it through the really long winter that we have. So
because they have to bundle up, and then by beating their wings, they keep it hot in there, hot enough to survive.
So the bees, imagine they get into a shape about the size of like a basketball, and then they kind of rotate in and out from the core with the queen at the center, and they move their wings and generate heat through friction, and that's how they stay warm all winter long. And if you don't have enough bees, they just
they'll freeze.
They'll freeze.
So you can put styrofoam around the outside of your beehives. That's one way that you can help insulate them. But if they get any moisture in there during the winter, they will just die immediately. So we have successfully wintered over bees. If you've been watching our videos, we have recently found out that we are pregnant with twins. So they are due right when we would need to be doing beekeeping in the spring. And we just feel like we probably will not have time to do bees next year. So that's why we offered our bees to somebody else. And we're just calling it good for beekeeping, probably for at least a year, if not 2. So we can always come back to it, but we're gonna extract this honey and enjoy it over the next couple of years. So we'll show you what we got going on now that we have the beehives inside. Why did you bring them in and put them in the heater room?
So I put the hives for a couple reasons. When I pulled the honey out of the hives, it was really wet. It was raining and things needed to dry out, but also the honey needed to dry out. A lot of this honey was not fully formed or capped, and so it still had a lot of water in it, and it was just kind of runny, and so this helped get it a little bit more thick.
And we didn't film this part of getting these in because it was just like we had days of torrential rain, and Mark just needed to get it done. So he donned the bee suit and a raincoat underneath your bee suit, right?
Yeah.
And just powered through it. So it was not really a filming thing. But when he was done, yeah, he was drenched, and I was grateful he went and did that for us. So this lid has some that's been draining out.
So I had the hives stacked on top of this in the heater room, and a bunch of honey just drained down naturally out of them, and it's running down here. It's pretty good. We get to sample it. It's good. It's kind of mixing with this pollen and whatever else is on here, but
one year the honey tasted like cinnamon apples. This year it just tastes like honey. It doesn't have like a...
That's got a fruity taste.
It does have a fruity taste.
You should totally try this.
Sometimes you kind of have to try them next to each other year to year. They always have a different color. They always have different like viscosity, just depending on how much water's in them. Now, there have been years where we have rented equipment in the garage. You take a hot knife, cut off the top, the caps of the honey, put them in a centrifuge, spin them, and then the honey comes out, and then you drain it out the bottom. We are not doing that this year. We haven't done that for several years because it's just a really sticky, messy process. And we found that we can take them to, what is it that we're taking them to?
Alaska Wildflower Honey. And they do it for, 60 cents a pound. Yeah. And we found that for our marriage and our sanity, 60 cents a pound was a really good bargain to have them do all that work.
Really good at it too. Like they've got the right equipment, they've got the right technique, they do it, they've got it in a warm place so that it flows really nicely. They just have it down to a science. So we are going to be taking these out to them this afternoon. And then in about a week, right?
Yep.
They'll call us when it's done and we can go pick up our honey, and then we'll come back and show you what we ended up with. We don't expect a lot this year. If you've been following along the bee journey, this was just a rough year. It was cold, it was wet. We didn't get much sunshine till the very end of the summer. And even then it was like several days of rain and then a couple days of sun.
I'm enjoying this honey right here. This is good.
Yeah, you need to go have like a peanut butter and honey sandwich with that.
I'm feeling healthy.
So we have these buckets that we just do honey in.
Food grade buckets.
Food grade buckets. They're clean. We only ever put honey in them. We got those ready to go.
It's really
so Mark's gonna sort through. We're only gonna take frames that have a good amount of honey in them, right?
Yeah.
We're not gonna take any that are empty.
So like that one has a bunch of honey in here that's not capped, and then these are capped. So definitely we'll be taking this and
Ooh, wow.
That one.
Yeah, show that one. That's like a full. It's funny it's interesting to see it without all the bees covering it.
So this box is from our stronger hive, And I think almost everything in here is good. I need to double check.
Mark has laid down some trash bags here because there is a little bit of honey leaking and we don't want to get it all over the car. Sticky mess. With how far behind I am on videos, I'll probably be able to show you in this video before I edit it how much we got back. You get to see it in quick time. Okay, here is the raspberry harvest from today, but we also had friends that picked at least another 1.5 gallons. So we're gonna freeze dry some. I've never done this before. Oh wow. We're just gonna lay them out in a single layer. Give it a try. We'll sprinkle one with sugar and see the difference.
One?
Okay, so we're doing 2 batches in the freeze dryer. We're gonna put some on the trays and freeze them until tomorrow, and then we'll do the second batch. The rest I am going to start just putting into bags. Some we like to just freeze for the winter. We're running out of room in our refrigerator, so we gotta do them all different ways. Now when we do them in a bag like this, they just freeze into a big clump. If we want them to be individual ones like you would put in a smoothie, we would need to put them on a cookie sheet, flash freeze them before we put them into a bag or a Tupperware. But this would be used for like a pie or fruit leather later on, so we can just freeze it into a bag, thaw out the whole bag, and use the whole bag in the future. We're not letting any go to waste. The last couple are going in some ice cream. Beth, can you hold on a second?
Mix it up.
Okay, you need a little bit more ice cream. Okay, these ones are going down to the freeze dryer. Bev, you need to sit in the kitchen to eat that. Are people getting less honey this year?
Yeah.
Just all around?
For us too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna combine some hives, but
Yeah, that's what we did in order to make a crop on ours.
Okay, so this is just to keep warm in here.
This pre-warms the honey so that it filters, it extracts easier, it goes through the uncapping machine without without any problems. It just speeds the whole process up.
So he said in that hothouse, things just get to a really good temperature so that when they run it through the uncapping machine and things, it's just optimal. They're drying out in there, they get warm, and then they've got another facility behind it where they do all the honey extracting. So we will come back in a week or so and get our honey. He did say everybody is bringing in way less honey. So it's not just us, it's just, we knew it would be that way. It's the season for low honey yields. Okay, the boys just came up and told me that the freeze dryer is done with the raspberries. So it went for 22 hours and 34 minutes. We're just gonna open up the valve.
Is that water gonna come out?
Not yet. You always want to check them before you push defrost or no defrost, because if they need more time, you can just add more time on right away. Nice and crispy.
Good, try one. Good. good.
Oh yeah.
Sour.
They just get kind of chalky, but they're
Sour.
super great flavor. Hey, take some upstairs.
Super sour.
They are done, so I'm gonna push no defrost. That just means it's gonna defrost naturally. I leave the door open and the valve open, and then all the ice that's around the side, which is all the moisture out of the raspberries, is now gonna drain out. If you need it to happen faster, then you push the defrost button. This is just another great way to preserve food so it doesn't take up as much room in your freezer. We do have another batch ready to go, but we're leaving out of town tomorrow and it wouldn't be done in time, so I'm gonna do it when I get home. It doesn't hurt to freeze it for longer.
They might be better with sugar.
This one has, they have sugar on them.
All of them?
There's only one tray that didn't. Dad added a little bit of sugar. Definitely will be making more of these. They're so yummy. You could add them to oatmeal or a smoothie, or just eat them as a snack.
Look at this, Mom. Mom, we need to add more sugar next time.
I wonder if you need to like toss them in sugar.
Yeah.
If you want them to be.
I mean, these boys are going to town on this.
No.
So light.
I just ate a huge piece. It's really good, but it gets like stuck on your back of your throat and it hurts.
Well, you
bad.
gotta drink water when you're eating freeze-dried stuff because it has no moisture on it. Okay, Mark is cleaning the bucket out from the freeze dryer after doing raspberries. There's like 2 inches in there. That's amazing.
That's like
So much water came out of them.
over a gallon of water.
Patsy?
Wow. It's over a gallon of water.
Okay, we got our honey back from the extractor.
This is what it is. It's pretty dirty at the top. This is all the cappings, but underneath you got the good rich honey there. So we got to filter it out.
So this is about, what, a third of the way up this 5-gallon bucket?
Yeah.
This is like the least amount we've ever gotten.
Yep. Except for our first year. The first year I was learning how to do it, but. Oh, I'm sorry, Everett. Let me get so.
So what we gotta do is we have a second bucket that has a spout on it, and then we're gonna filter through this and get all the cappings out.
All right, so I'm just trying to get some of these cappings that rose to the top, and I'm gonna just take them and put them in this bowl for now, so that they don't clog up the filter, and then we'll do them at the end. If you want, Everett, you can take some of this and just kind of suck on it and chew on it like gum. So when we see the cappings, what that means is they take a hot knife and they cut along the face of the frame of the honey, and then they just kind of lay that down, and then they stick it in the centrifuge for the extraction where it pulls all the honey out. So these are the tops of the honeycomb, just the very top layer of the honeycomb. All right, so now we have the cappings in here in this big bowl. We're gonna start just pouring this in. Man. Oh, and you gotta help make sure that just so little this year. It's kind of sad. An angle, maybe. Is that all right? Okay. Still dripping, I guess. Out on that filter. Okay. All right, we'll just put these cappings in there now and let them drain for an hour or so.
So in addition to filtering the honey, I am also still processing more raspberries. Surprise, surprise. I'm making a huge batch of the raspberry fruit leather. We did run out of the homemade applesauce, so I bought some applesauce at Costco to continue getting to make this fruit leather because we're just running out of space and places to keep raspberries. So this is a great way to use it because everybody loves it. This is another day, but we also kind of became obsessed with making these fair style shaken lemonades, and we added raspberries to these as well. So you take lemons and sugar and then added the raspberries, you muddle them up, and then you add 2 cups of water. Then I like to strain out the seeds of the raspberries and the lemons just so you don't get a big chunk while you're drinking it. But then the lemons go back in, you add a bunch of ice, and then you get this beautiful shaken lemonade. Oh, we've become really obsessed with these. I bought lemons to make another recipe that I'll show you in just a second. And so we got to make sure we're getting through the lemons. I showed Bennett how to make these, and no surprise, he's making them all the time. Now I have these lemon raspberry cookies that I also wanted to try out. I feel like these raspberry lemon cookies turned more into like muffin tops. I still think they're gonna taste good. I just got the texture wrong, I think because I added egg into the recipe. They're supposed to be like gluten-free, egg-free, vegan. I added egg and used regular flour. So I think the texture's off, but I think the flavor is going to be really good. I just put a little raspberry glaze on them. And your brother's coming. A few more raspberries used up. Okay, another batch of fruit leather done. We would just run out of space in our freezers if we didn't find other ways to use all these berries. Okay, I have 2 left in the dehydrator that weren't quite done. When I go to bed, I'm just gonna turn it off, and then by morning they should be fine. 2 bags. If I leave it out on the counter, one of these bags would have been eaten. So we'll save these for lunches and stuff, but they're gonna be great. All right, we just got 2 kids to bed. It's been about 2 weeks since we actually took the honey in. The process is finally going to be completed. Mark filtered it into this honey bucket that has a spigot so we can put it into mason jars.
Okay, here we go. The first tap. Oh yeah.
It's got a pretty color this year.
Yeah, it does.
We'll grab some other years of honey and compare them here in a minute when we're done. This really is not a big amount, but we're just thankful for what we got.
Another jar here in a second.
Do you want me to close it?
No need to overfill them this year. Okay. Well, here's all of our honey. How much is this? We got 1 gallon, about 1 and like this would be half, 1.5, 1 3/4 gallons. Here we gotta get a lid on this one.
That's about, we have like 1 3/4.
Yeah, 1 3/4 gallons. So it's interesting. You really can see the different colors in it. It's got this nice yellowish color. When you have a bigger jar, kind of a little bit darker. For reference, this is our honey. It's crystallized from 2020. What's this, 2020? And then you can put it next to it.
So it's a little bit darker and it has solidified, but it's so tasty.
And then 2021, we had a very light year, but this is all kind of creamed and crystallized. A little bit harder. Yeah, this is pretty hard now. We'd have to, that's good.
This one is so light compared to this year's.
Yep.
Like, crazy difference.
Yeah. So there we go. And
put it a date. Put it away for a rainy day. I can't even speak.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, friends, for spending time with us, finishing off the honey harvest, harvesting tons and tons of raspberries, making all the yummy things. The boys have now been back in school for 3 or 4 weeks. We're finding a groove there. So I know this video started out with them getting back to school. We are now deep into the first quarter. So thank you so much for spending time with us. We are so grateful for each and every one of you, and we'll see you again real soon for more of This Alaska Life.